Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Rise and Play. So, I'm evolving the podcast into a new format, which is also mirroring my own journey into my leadership work, coaching, and the transformative retreats that I've been leading with Orin. And because it's such a big part of my work, I'm bringing it to life also in the podcast. And that's why the podcast is evolving. So, we'll have formats where it's going to be raw, live, and less performative and more about presence. Because that's what I believe is required in the leadership of tomorrow, where I've seen so much of performance to a point that we don't know who we are. The people in charge don't know who they are, and we don't even remember why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. And then when all the collapse happens, then we look back and wonder why. So my invitation with this podcast is for you, is your moment to connect with yourself and presence. And what does that look like? To just be with yourself and stop performing. So today I'm in presence with Maria Gillis, and I explain a bit the format for today, where we'll be in full presence instead of performing. We are in our roles where we have the opportunity to perform all the time, but here it's a space for authenticity. And I introduce different themes depending on the season, depending on the collective, what's going on. A theme that is very much present right now through my coaching conversation, through the work with Orin, because Maria also has been evolving into becoming not only a participant, but a collaborator, a team member. Maria, you were also an important person at the last retreat, being, as you said, the scout, the scout girl, showing the way and also being in presence. So the theme today is letting go. We approach winter, and as you can see outside right now with the autumn leaves, the summer is gone. I mean, in Berlin is really gone. Leaves are falling, dying, and it's inviting for a retreat to ourselves and reflecting on the year, introspecting, and also having the hard and honest conversation with ourselves on what is no longer working. What do we need to let go of? What do we know deep down that we need to let go of but are afraid to examine? What are the big changes that will be required? For some, I've heard it might be a change of job, quitting the job. For others, it might mean a change of career, industry, or even like completely path, doing something different like I've done, and we will talk about it today. It could be letting go of relationships, dynamic that no longer serve, very difficult, but we know deep down they're not working. It could be also letting go of identities, an image of ourselves, an idea of ourselves we had, and that no longer serve to evolve to a truer version of us. So tune in this theme today, and we start the conversation here with Maria on letting go. So one thing I wanted to touch on is this whole year, 2025. What the heck has happened, right, Maria?
I don't know.
So yeah, with previous episode, who is Maria? We're not going to spend too much time on that today. But today we're two souls, amazing women, connecting on the theme of letting go. So I would like to invite you, if you'd like to share your own story, how does the theme of letting go resonate with you? What is your life for you in this time of the year?
When I think of fall and hearing about letting go, retreating inward, and sitting with ourselves, I get a picture of calm, soothing, like maybe you're cozy at home. But when I really think about it, what it means to surrender and to let go, and what this season change means, I have a very visual picture of going into the storm. So rather than coming into our homes and being all cozy under a blanket, drinking some tea and watching a movie, actually letting go feels more like there's a storm happening outside, there's rain, there's gushing winds, and you're just going to expose yourself to it, because that's truly what letting go can feel
Hmm.
like. And so that's how the theme is present in me of it's not easy to let go. There's so many inputs that we constantly have, patterns, frameworks that give us a sense of security and
Hmm.
grounding, but they tend to be artificial constructs.
Yeah.
And it's by exposing ourselves to the natural elements that just our core gets shaken. That's my initial visualization
Hmm.
of this process. How do you see it for yourself?
So yeah, letting go for me is a very present theme right now. Actually, that's why I wanted to record something with you as well. It's barely been a year. My God, I feel like I lived 3 lifetime in this. Whew, what happened? So it's been barely a year with Orin. Yes, full switch from purely tech. I'm of course still doing coaching, but in a very different way now. To building retreats in a certain modality. We will certain methods that we'll get to, and then so many changes in my life where some friendship died unfortunately, but they had to. Some relationship died, and I'm grieving a lot. I'm grieving a lot these days. And at the same time, as we were sharing before recording this moment, I'm celebrating as well all the learnings, because I can fight against the path that is presented to me, or I can see the learning and the wisdom. And so while I'm very sad to grieve certain things that are no more, certain identity of myself, I am also accepting the path forward and what it means, and everything that in the next month that will come to my life is going to be a better, more aligned mirror of where I am today. And that's the process of letting go, is when you evolve, the world that is part of your life may not be aligned anymore with how where you're evolving. And it's always an invitation for the world around you, relationship, identity, even what you do as a work, to evolve with you, or then to die, unfortunately.
And before you started Orin, how did that manifest within you? How did you feel that there were parts of you that were ready to die
Mm.
and shift your path?
So I had two very brutal events that happened to me, for me, professionally. And it was, I would say, such a strong body shock that after experiencing that, I knew it was time to go. So the first one was when I was building a studio at Voodoo. I had a call, I don't know, it was a Wednesday night at 9 p.m. with no preparation, zero empathy from my boss, telling me I had to fire half of my studio and it had to happen in the next days. And I remember that call, and I was, is that how should company and business work? And then I sat with myself that night, and I remember I'd rather leave at this point than follow those instructions, because it's going to create more damage in the life of others. And at this point, I can stop it here with myself, and I'm not going to continue the toxicity. So that moment, I remember I promised to myself, never again. And I did leave the company, and also prepared everything for the team to have a transition a bit more gentle than that call that I have received. And I received a second call, another point of my career, a few years after, at a company I will not name, but you can track it back in my history to have a guess. And in this context, I was hired to clean up the mess after an acquisition and reorganize the company, the structure, the people in the right place, doing the right thing, which I have done. And then I received that call a year after I've done quite a substantial part of this work in a very brutal way with no explanation, that also I needed to go. It was such a cold call and so brutal that I was like, how is this possible again? But this complete lack of empathy and taking responsibility, like I'm not responsible for this mess. If my role was not clear and was not needed, it's not my fault. I did the job that I was required to do being there. And then the second promise I made to myself that day was, I'm not going to do this again. Go in a company, clean up the mess, be paid for it, and then be let go when I'm no longer required. Because, yeah, what I understood with those roles, as long as I would comply and do the job and not have a voice and not challenge things that I think should be changed for more sustainability and more integrity, I was a problem. So I promised to myself, I'm not going to compromise with that, and I'm going to create that space that where I can have my voice, and the ones who believe that we should build businesses from that place can follow, but I'm not going to comply anymore because I am an accomplice to the system. And so that was the seed of what led me to create, not immediately Orin, but if I was to promises to myself, is I will not put myself in a situation where I have to compromise my integrity. And I'm so happy with Orin. I define the terms. I mean, you work with Orin. People feel alive, safe. They are in the zone of genius. They get the value in the way that is needed for them. And there are many ways of getting value, which is not monetary. And they're creating something collective that is very meaningful for them and align with who they are. And just that, for me, creating that space, which transcended a game studio, which I thought would be a game studio, was a big breakthrough. And so I had to let go of working in all systems. That's what I had to let go.
How did it feel in your body though? Because I understand you didn't want to be a part of the system, you didn't want to be perpetuating those patterns of lack of empathy. What did you feel in your body? What made you just have to stop and reassess your life quite drastically?
Yeah. At that time, those two events, I remember I was sitting in my flat in Paris and I was staring at the wall and I was frozen. I was frozen. It was like frozen of shock, you know? It's like something is terribly wrong. So in my body, I felt paralysis. And then I felt deep fight or flight mode. And there was the fight, like, okay, am I going to fight? And I was like, is it where I should spend my energy? And flight is like, I'm going to save myself. But I was really in a stress response and survival. That's how it felt in my body. Although I was safe, you know, materialistically, I felt very unsafe. And I knew that I will never actually be safe in those systems until I build that security in me, first of all. But also, you know, of course, you can let go of people, teams. I mean, there are some financial reasons, but that's just a way of doing things. And what I saw here is it's so uncomfortable to let go of people that no one is taking responsibility, and it's like it's kind of outsourced in a way, so it's not painful for the person who should take responsibility, but the damage is huge for the person receiving it. And that's more my problem, taking responsibility. No one calls a company to change the strategy, change their teams, pivot. The responsibility is on leaders. It's not the cause, it's not the fault of the team. You know, so I don't agree with that when it's like it's put on you just to have wash your hands and say you didn't do the job or you were not right. Like, excuse me, you didn't have a clear strategy. I followed the strategy. So you can also look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, why are we here in that situation? So that was really that lack of accountability for me that was more painful.
We
But
see
yeah,
that.
yes. And that's where the body knows better than your mind, because your mind will always convince you it's okay, it's all right, others can do it, others are doing it, that's how it should be. But I trusted my body. I was like, I don't think any job should make you feel this way. I knew deep down, and now that I do a different job, I'm never feeling like this again.
And we see that lack of accountability and responsibility in workplaces with leadership, also relationships of all kinds. I guess, political society as well, in all facets of life. And I'm wondering, why is there a shying away of taking responsibility? Why not be accountable for your actions?
So that's a theme I am going deep in my coaching with the founders, entrepreneurs I work with. Although they will never admit in those words publicly, there's a big sense of shame and guilt, because admitting you've done something wrong, you were wrong, you have to sit with the guilt and the shame. And I know, again, in this world where we do everything to avoid pain, something uncomfortable, instead of sitting with your shame, taking responsibility, which is what I would say a conscious leader would do, it's avoiding it and projecting it into others. And that's what most people do when unconscious and when choosing not to be conscious. And to do this work, to sit with your shame, it's a lot of the work we do at Orin. It's a deep emotional work because it has an origin story. The shame is not just with us in our present life, but it has origins when we felt ashamed, maybe when we were younger, when we were shamed, and it was a very traumatic experience personally, or we've witnessed it with our parents who couldn't hold their shame. And so there's a lot there. And when leaders don't examine their shadow, I call it shadow in the leadership, the shadows are projected into the business. And that's what happens most of the time. There's a fear of being seen, incompetent. There's a fear of being caught or exposed. And what is required is to sit with your own mistakes. Each time I sit with it, I learn, I take responsibility, I apologize, I repair, and then I can move on. But when you don't do that, you just accumulate shame and you have even more reasons to not take responsibility because the elephant is so big to deal with that if you really want to go into integrity, you have to do this cleanup, and it's no one's responsibility but yours as a leader, your own responsibility.
Hmm. And do you find that as you start dealing with your shame and your pain head on, you start surrendering and opening to it? I was wondering, examining your journey, do you feel that over time you become more open to the deeper wounds, to the deeper pain, perhaps pain that has been within you?
Yeah.
And only when you take some of those blankets and you gain that courage and that comfort of sitting with your pain that you're ready to examine.
Yes. So there are different modalities which we've done this work with Orin, which is a lot of somatic work because it's also the same also with therapy. It's very traumatizing and unsafe to go to the places of pain. Because my story of shame, it's a lot of shame that I have carried from the shame I've seen in my father, who has never faced his own shame. So instead, he projected it with violence towards others. And so for me, one big source of shame was going back there. And I remember one of my sessions on EMDR therapy in a safe container. To heal that, I had to go there. I had to go there in a safe way, go back to that place, witness it again, and process it properly instead of like shutting down and absorbing it and being like traumatized by it. So being able to go through those places that are quite dark sometimes, painful, requires safety. And it's very difficult to go there alone. That's why you don't go there alone. That's why you avoid, but you use the resources and help of a therapist. Coaching is helping more to go forward with it. That's not my work to go there in deep therapy, in a therapy sense. But coaching can be very therapeutic because you understand the origins and you can take action. So it's complementary to therapy. And of course, the somatic work we do with Orin, which is a whole safe container that can last 3 to 6 months, where the group we form together, we can share and explore and go to those places of pain where we are witnessed by a safe container. Because by design, we hear, we are seen, we're witnessed, we're understood, which is the big healing part. That's why therapy is also so powerful, is when somebody beyond you understand what you've been through, you can heal because you realize you're not alone. So that could be very healing. And then when we do at the retreat the work, we do a lot of release, somatic release, right? Where we release the anger, the shame, the grief, a lot of crying, a lot of tears, a lot of joy as well, because those emotions need to be processed. And that's when you have the strength to go there. So in my coaching, I can go deep with my clients where I have walked myself too. I would not be able to go to their pain, their sadness, the shame if I haven't walked myself there too. So I'm very familiar with the feeling and I can sit with it. I remember even in one of our ceremonies sitting at the retreat, in a deep meditation state, I was sitting with my shame and I was talking to her or to him. I don't know. It was a little boy. And then I was like, where are you? Where are you hiding? My shame was hiding in me and it didn't want to be seen. And so I was like holding it and in my arms and say, you're safe now. You're okay. You don't have to hide. You're okay. And then suddenly I had the vision of, I think it was a little boy that came out hiding in a corner in shadows and started to climb up the stairs to go outside and play in a garden. And that metaphor was actually what was happening in me somatically because suddenly I gave room for shame to exist also with me. And when I feel shame, I don't feel ashamed of shame, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel shame and not identify myself with shame. And it passes through me. I learn what I need to learn through it, take responsibility, and then it goes away. What is your relationship with shame, Maria?
I'd say still discovering it.
Mm-hmm.
I find we live in a world of mirrors, of projections. How do we define who we are? Most of the time is by looking at how other people are. And then you create your own picture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I've been working on because I do feel quite different from how other people are in my day to day, or maybe not how they are, but how they project themselves to be, because everyone is projecting themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
we live in these cycles. And to me, that's one of the most powerful tools that Oren gave me, which is what you mentioned, the witnessing people that you build a very close relationship with and trust, and they make you feel seen and loved. It's almost like the projection can break
Mm-hmm.
and you can truly sit with yourself and figure out, yeah, okay, this is me. I really like myself. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you that strength to, go into society, back into the projected world and hold on to yourself. Growing to see these emotions as something that you hold. Again, that's one of my biggest lessons from Warren. You can hold your shame. You're not your shame. You can hold your discomfort. You can feel it and still move forward, holding on to yourself fully and loving yourself fully. And that requires practice because we are constantly going to get these reflections in our day to day of things that we feel shame about ourselves. And it's how do we process that? So that's, I think I think that's how my relationship is with shame. It's constantly a work in progress. I think the work never ends is something that I've been
Mm.
trying to also embrace, not expecting it to ever go away. It's just one of the emotions. And
Mm.
we're always going to be getting triggers in society of, oh, that person seems to have it so much easier than me, or it flows easier than me. They feel natural or complete, but it's always bringing it back to, it's okay for me to feel ashamed about this part of myself. I'm not really ashamed about it. It's just a feeling that I get triggered. And then something that I try to do now is work with gratitude. When I feel shame, I try to be grateful for what I feel ashamed about, because generally those things are actually what makes me unique and special, can give joy
Mm.
and love into the world.
Yeah, you've done a lot of work and evolution also since you joined Orin since January. I remember a conversation where it was a big leap of faith. And then I would recommend you tune in to the other episode of Maria where she shares her whole journey, not only with Orin, but in games and still a journey of life.
I did have a question for you. The question that you just asked me and my answer, that's quite recent. I created this container to block off the projections of the world for 6 to 8 years of my life because I just couldn't deal with everything at once.
Mm.
And when I crossed paths with Oren, I would say I was at a point of having absolutely no idea how to live anymore. I just didn't know what else to try because I had tried many things and they hadn't quite allowed me to break free of that container I had created. And so when we were talking about the layers, the blankets where you hide your shame, how do you think people can stop listening to their brain, listen to your body? So the shock that you were feeling, many of us may have felt that, but just carried on because your brain justifies it and you keep making the same choices, the same patterns. To join Oren or any kind of like deeper somatic self work, how do you think that someone can feel it to realize that they're ready to start unveiling the blankets?
So there's another observation in how we live in society right now, especially in modern world and technology. I'd say 90% of our existence happens through the mind and the brain, and even more amplified with tech. Everything we consume, and that's, I think, where we lost touch very deeply with something more important part of us, which is our body. Our body, our feelings, our emotions, our hearts, our guts, all those other parts of ourselves that have an intelligence and a life. So awareness already helps to maybe practice more reconnection with body. And I'm so glad that movements like yoga, somatic, I don't know, any kind, sound healing, we have like a huge spectrum of alternative medicine that are advocating for different practices that are in the body to move away from the mind and back to the body. So I'd say for people struggling right now to even understand their body, trust it, is to spend more time in their body. Something that changed really my life, and I felt it was like my shame actually that activated. I felt ashamed of being disconnected with my body. For a long time, everything was happening from my brain. And then I was seeing people who could dance and sing, and I was so envious. Like I will never be them because I'm not like them. I'm here. And I accepted that reality. And then one day I met someone who introduced me to dance, and I was like, I think I like it very much and I think I can try. So I studied bachata and I started to be in my body, dance. My body became an instrument and it completely changed the flow of energy of how I felt. And probably that was, I could say, some start of opening into my journey of more this consciousness, which was not starting from that place. It's just by being in my body. For people listening, asking themselves, am I connected with my body or not? I would really recommend starting first activities to reconnect with your body. You're not tapping into your full potential and self if you are just doing intellectual activities. And I know dance is scary, I know it's uncomfortable, but as we discussed today, growth happens only through discomfort. I've never heard growth like sitting in the blanket at home and in that safe container and watching Netflix shows. It's comfortable, but it's not growth.
Hmm.
So doing an activity, and there are many, you can even start to sing, activate your voice. Somatic work, join some groups, men, women, retreats, and so on, where there's a lot of that work. You don't have to do it yourself, and you just need to show up. It's done for you. That's why Orin exists. For me, it was, I know it's difficult to fight against the rituals of life. Here, it's designed for you where you just need to show up. You don't have to think about it, and it's doing the work for you. It's like a PT, a personal trainer. So,
Mm.
so yeah, I hope it answered the question.
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that our body is an instrument. We can play music by dancing.
Yeah, you've moved your body, you started to sing, you play music. Look at us.
Dancing until the morning is good.
Yes.
I've been contemplating a lot about even the wording of letting go, endings and beginnings, life, death, life. Like we live to die many times to then be reborn many times as we keep realigning our life to ourselves. And my contemplation has been, is that actually, because endings, death, they're just very visceral, fine, with a sense of finality moments in life. But personally, I don't feel that way. When friendships fizzle out, romantic relationships, switching jobs, even changing countries, it
Hmm.
didn't feel quite like an ending, just more of this natural, just realigning, a small nudge to realigning life. Even this year in your
Hmm.
life, how did you feel?
Hmm. So I can expand on why the letting go is so difficult and necessary. This is your time to sit with yourself and let go of things. Because we do that all the time, consciously or unconsciously, and you probably don't want to do that unconsciously. So, the cycle of death and life, again, the mind is really attached to it. We have the idea of it that it's something to fear, something to be afraid of, and we think immediately of our physical death. But from the moment we expand our mind and stop being attached to the definition of death and life as this such a dramatic way, it's a cycle. You look at the plants, the trees, the flowers, they die and they plant, with the nutrients in the soil, something new is born. It's happening everywhere, every day around us. Our cells are dying every day. So we're in a permanent cycle of death and life. Even the menstrual cycle of a woman is that cycle as well. So what I'm inviting is to be more familiar with the cycle of death and life in a more metaphorical way instead of a dramatic way that we don't want to look away and then it's like, no, I don't want to think about that. I want just to live in joy and not think about death. It is there, whether you want it or not. I saw many people, I'm fine, I'm gonna take care of my finding a job when that happens. And then a few weeks later they tell me I've been fired, panic, I need to find something. It's like, well, it will always come. There will be an end to things, always. So I think a relationship to death is how you are alive. When you know things are going to die, I think it also creates a complete different sense of aliveness because you know it won't last forever. It makes you appreciate the relationship in a different way, the day that you experience, the moment, the job that you have with gratitude, and then be ready for it to stop because it can stop. So it's about the practicing in small ways about this cycle. So, one thing I can recommend as journaling, letting go, is re examining. I do that every 6 months. I re examine my life. I have a huge journaling. I do it on a weekend. And I will make a note for myself, maybe even retreat a day in countryside nature and do it. And then I look at all the areas of life and the ones that are still aligned or need to change. They need to change. And so, for example, as I've done that process, there are a few things professionally I decided to let go of. I'm not going to do so much consulting work. It is a big decision in the sense like, wow, that was my financial security. But now I know my path is really expanding with my leadership coaching and full time there. My podcast had to change. I was not happy with how it was evolving, growing. There was a dissonance. I enjoyed very much how I have spent time interviewing gaming leaders, but the work I'm doing is so much bigger than just gaming. So I decided also to change, to kill it, how I'm doing it, and starting something new, which we are doing now. So that was kind of a pain in the ass that I was like, later, and I'm doing it. Building a website, I was like, oh no, I need to change this and I need to kill that other website. Let's just do it, you know. And the big one as well, which was identity. I'm building spaces for women with Orin, and I'm stuck with it. It's like, great, I found my thing, and this is my little bubble. And then I started to have that voice inside. What about men?
Mm.
Yes, men need work. And I was, damn it, I need to change things again. I was just getting comfortable. And I had to let go of that idea. Maybe I'm not just building a sisterhood, I'm building back to the origin conscious leadership. So I started the men retreat and I have quite many men interested. So the intuition was right. But I'm not compromising with the work I do with women, which also is needed for now in a separated way to go deep in our emotions, in a vulnerable work in a safe way, container. And then at some point, as we rise in more of the security that we build for ourselves, no problem to be together in the same spaces. But right now, this is much required. So I go through that process many times. And I have some friendship also that fell apart, and when I felt that they were falling apart, and I'm not trying to save them, to even make a drama out of them, it's just letting them go because they just don't happen anymore. So, and it's a beautiful process, and you can do it in such a loving way that doesn't have to be dark. Like
Mm.
writing, I write also a letter of forgiveness and love, and when I burn things to just pass on a new chapters, like sometimes the page. And so I would encourage that ritual because then as we let go, we create space for new things, new
Mm.
opportunities. And I can confirm here, since I have made space for new things in my life, I have a big flow of abundance that started to come. Opportunities, events, more exciting things for next year. That's how you grow. But you
Mm.
need to clear your space first for new things to arrive in your life.
And there's always that fear of will they arrive?
Yes. And that's part of a rite of passage. You're ready to die, to say, when you walk through the passage of fear, because you say, what if it does not happen? Yeah, and so what? If this doesn't happen, okay, you revisit, you change. You die, you let that cycle die, which was the experiment, and then you move to a new cycle. So, yes, the fear is valid. It may not happen, but everything is a progression towards a direction. That's what you need to trust. It's not going to work out maybe on the first attempt, but everything
Mm.
will be a lesson for what's the next step, always.
That's a very powerful thought.
Hmm.
Looking back at my life and thinking, at what point did I become aware that I was shifting the responsibility of endings to other people rather than taking it for myself? When I wanted
Hmm.
a relationship to end, when I wanted a job to end. And there's this pattern where people start to become, I don't know if toxic is the right word, but you start planting the seeds of your own ending, but you want the other entity to do the ending part for you. So you're creating the environment for it to happen, but you're not taking responsibility and doing it yourself. And in my 20s, I suppose, it was realizing I hurt people in my life in that self awareness journey. And I really
Hmm.
wish that hadn't been the case. How do you think we can gain more self awareness before we hurt others in our life? Or is that a rite of passage that we have to cause pain for us to open our eyes to our own pain?
So it could be proactive. If I know people who are, by their identity, have a desire to be self aware. So they will go and educate themselves and learn and then try to bring that self-awareness, because when you have self-awareness, you know, you catch in the moment, not after a month after, but more usually a few hours, sometimes minutes, to know what has happened, and you can repair. But mistakes always will always happen. So the part you can optimize is the time to repair, if
Mm.
ever. For others who don't take that path, overconsciously they know that they could, but they say, oh, it's not, it's for us, it's not for me. Crisis will force it. Separation, messy separation, job collapse, company collapse, many kind of crisis. Usually it's like big crisis, the divorce. It will force you to see. But always, you know, we are humans, we are imperfect, we make mistakes, and Best thing we can do to one another is to acknowledge repair. And that's beautiful because we accept our imperfection with each other. As we're closing this conversation today, that's, I think, quite a lot of wisdom on the letting go for today. And we will touch on another theme next time. Is there something at last we haven't covered? I haven't asked you, should have asked you, or the other way around, to at least give our listeners some a bit more, if any other more tools to let go this winter?
At least what I do, I really just go out into the elements and sit with them.
Mm.
Don't being connected to the energy of the world, actually feeling the storm, it helps me connect with myself and just face it. And so rather than entering this worse bad weather season, I suppose, and retreating and being in your home and, canceling plans if the weather's not good or stop going out for walks, I really recommend just put on some warm clothes and go sit in the storm, close your eyes, breathe and feel it. Because if you do that, it will help you listen to what within you is storming, and you should probably actually listen and take action based on it.
Yeah. Which is a simple thing, but one you need discipline on. And you surf in Portugal, so it's beautiful. I would probably not surf, but spend a lot more time by the beach if I were. But I have a good forest here, so that's also nice. But yeah, definitely, because when you sit with yourself in the elements, as you say, you can't avoid your truth, what's going on. And then having the courage to face it, to listen to it, and also act on it. If you're in that situation, you're not alone. You can reach out to us. That's why we also create those conversations, those groups, because in this time, it takes courage to have integrity and do the right thing. We're incentivized right now in this world to not do the right thing. At the end of the day, back to the death and cycle, we sit with ourselves only, and we have to face ourselves at the end of our life. So, who do we want to be in this life?
And if someone is listening and not quite sure if they want to act on it, or maybe there was something about this conversation that resonated, what's the best way for them to contact you or have a conversation and understand the work of Oren and the support?
We have a website, and I'm quite visible on LinkedIn, so very easy to reach. I'm actually a very open person. When people reach out to me, I usually answer. We have different ways of working that go deep in this work in a safe and a beautiful way.
Well, the sun is officially up.
I have rain, but I have quite a lot of light.
It's a good way to start the day. And
Yeah.
podcast.
Well, thank you, Maria, for tuning in for this conversation. Beautiful conversation in the magical space of Orin. And yeah, we will continue the series in future episode with different themes, coaching themes, life, personal development themes, leadership. Continue with Maria and jamming on different themes. We'll see what's alive in 2 weeks.
Thanks for having me, Sophie.
Yeah,
You
take
too.
care.